Mike found himself on a perilous rock face, the sheer cliff a mirror to his internal struggle. He was climbing, seeking a precarious hold on life just as he sought purchase on the rock's subtle bumps. The safety buckle, a symbol of his remaining tether, slipped, a stark reminder of how close he was to losing everything. Yet, with a surge of adrenaline, he pushed on, the summit almost within reach. A sudden gust of wind, carrying with it a shower of loose stones, turned his ascent into a desperate fight for survival. He instinctively sought shelter, praying for the rockfall to cease. But fate had a crueler hand to play. A massive rock, dislodged by the wind, plummeted towards him. Miraculously, his safety rope held, preventing a fatal plunge, but the shock sent him reeling. Shaking off the near-fatal blow, Mike shed his safety gear, a symbolic act of embracing the danger. He became a man possessed, climbing with an almost reckless abandon, his body moving with a newfound, terrifying grace towards the peak. He reached the top, bruised but alive, the physical triumph a hollow echo of the emotional void within. The doctor, however, was not impressed by his daredevil act. Instead, she viewed it as a sign of his deteriorating mental state. Mike's brother's death in Iraq had plunged him into a deep depression, and only recently had he begun to claw his way back to normalcy. Yet, this suicidal climb revealed a deeper truth. He yearned for death, believing he should have been the one to perish instead of his brother. The doctor's words resonated with chilling accuracy, but Mike, in his despair, rejected further treatment, turning his back on the help offered. Back home, surrounded by his brother's belongings, Mike's grief was a palpable weight. He haphazardly opened a package, and there, nestled amongst the personal effects, was his brother's will. With trembling hands, he opened the letter, his brother's final wishes laid bare before him. The will stipulated cremation, his ashes to be scattered in the majestic Himalayas. This was a direct plea to Mike's tormented soul, a final, poignant request. Mike, his heart heavy with emotion, immediately booked a flight to India. Meanwhile, in a small village nestled in the foothills of the Indian Himalayas, a man named Della was addressing the local villagers, his voice booming with promises of progress and prosperity. He was advocating for a new hydropower plant, boasting of the 4,000 megawatts of electricity it would bring and the wealth it would generate. But for the villagers, this wealth was an illusion. Their ancestral land, the very foundation of their existence, would be swallowed by the project, becoming Della's personal property. Angie, a respected figure in the village, saw through Della's deceit. He vehemently opposed the project, his defiance fueled by a deep understanding of the sacred bond between the villagers and their land. With his father's respected standing in the community, Angie rallied the villagers, their collective voice rising in protest against Della's avarice. Della, a cunning and ruthless man, understood that breaking Angie's spirit would shatter the villagers' resistance. He orchestrated a brutal act of violence, blocking the road leading into the village and, using a construction vehicle, pushed Angie's father's bus off the mountain. The bus plunged into the abyss, taking with it all its passengers, including Angie's father. Waijia, Angie's grandson, arrived on the scene, devastated by the news of his grandfather's death. The official report declared it an accident, but Waijia, with a heavy heart, knew it was Della's doing. And now Angie was next. The two watched in horrified silence as Della, seemingly without a care in the world, drove away. On the other side of the world, Mike arrived in India. He met his mountain guide, Danny, at the pre-booked hotel. Danny, a seasoned climber with 10 Everest summits under her belt, emphasized the unforgiving nature of the Himalayas. Without proper training, attempting to climb its treacherous peaks was suicide. Only with the guidance of an experienced mountaineer could such a feat be achieved. Mike and Danny arrived at the bus station, where Danny secured passage on a local bus to Everest Base Camp. The driver, Pikas, a jovial but reliable man, chatted away as they waited. As the bus began its journey, Mike settled in, oblivious to the sinister figures who had silently boarded behind him. 2 assassins, a man and a woman, were now on board, their presence unnoticed. The female assassin, with a chilling smile, then produced a gun from her bag, brutally striking him unconscious. Her male accomplice swiftly secured him, dragging his limp body into a corner of the bus. Danny, observing the brutal efficiency of their assailants, felt a cold dread creep into her heart. The female assassin, in a cruel act of severing all communication, snatched everyone's phones and tossed them out the window. Mike, seeing the unfolding horror, felt a surge of rage. He spotted a loose floorboard beneath his feet, and a plan began to form in his mind. He exchanged a knowing glance with Danny, who understood his silent command. As the assassin's attention was momentarily diverted, Danny swiftly took out her climbing pole. Through the gap in the floor, Mike skillfully jammed it against a running tire, causing a sudden, violent hiss of air. Smoke billowed into the bus, filling the air with a choking haze. Mike, feigning confusion, raised his hands in surrender as the assassins looked around in bewilderment. One of the assassins, momentarily distracted by the chaos, left his post. Mike seized the opportunity. The prolonged friction on the tire caused it to explode with a deafening bang, sending the bus into a violent lurch. The two assassins, caught off guard, stumbled and nearly fell. Mike and Danny, their movements synchronized, lunged into action. The bus became a chaotic battleground. Mike, despite a fierce struggle, was overwhelmed by the assassin's brute force, beaten back with relentless blows. But in his retreat, he managed to grab the snow-climbing pole. Seizing an opening, he expertly thrust the sharpened tip of the pole into the assassin's body, sending him sprawling out of the bus. With Mike's quick thinking, Danny swiftly subdued the female assassin. However, the damaged tire caused the bus to careen wildly, narrowly avoiding a plunge down the mountain. As the shaken passengers disembarked, they were met with another grim sight. A police officer from Shanghai, accompanied by his men. The officer, initially confused by the scene, listened as Pikas recounted the ordeal. Danny, with a heavy heart, handed over the captured assassin to the police. The damaged bus required a replacement from another district, leaving the passengers stranded in the small town. Among them was Professor Myers, who observed the closed doors of the villagers with growing suspicion. With Danny's help, he learned the village's name, Kodali. The name struck him with a chilling realization, a look of horror spreading across his face. He explained to Danny and her daughter the dark truth. The land here was embroiled in bitter disputes, and people lived in constant fear. Not long ago, the village elder, who owned the most land, had tragically fallen to his death, an accident that Professor Myers knew was anything but. And the young man who had been attacked by the assassin today was the elder's grandson. With this grim revelation, Professor Myers left, but not before his daughter, Star, approached Danny, pleading for self-defense lessons. Danny, however, was in no position to teach. Soon after, Della arrived with his bus, and the Shanghai police officer, acting on a direct order, ordered everyone to leave immediately, ignoring Professor Myers' protests. This only fueled Professor Myers' growing concern, and he shared his suspicions with Mike, who was still trying to fix the bus. Mike, now fully aware of the sinister nature of Della's operations, a ruthless land grab that had already claimed the life of the American professor, knew that remaining hidden was no longer an option. He knew that the only way to expose Della was to ensure that the people who knew about this illegal activity survive. For their own safety, a small group of 5, including Mike and Danny, decided to cross the treacherous gorge and seek refuge in China. Once there, they would be safe from Della's reach. As the bus approached the canyon, Angie took the wheel, preparing to use the crane to transport the bus across. But just then, Della's convoy appeared in the distance. To buy time for the others to escape, Angie activated the crane, knowing it would draw Della's attention. Mike, still inside the bus, was nearly thrown from the vehicle as the crane lurched, but he clung on, his face a mask of determination. He watched as Angie, with a look of grim resolve, stared down Della's approaching vehicles. Danny, reacting swiftly, opened fire, and Angie joined in, a desperate barrage of bullets against the approaching enemy. But they were outnumbered, and Angie was quickly wounded, his body riddled with bullets. Danny, too, was hit, her resistance faltering. Mike, driven by a surge of adrenaline, burst from the bus and into the control room, catching the female assassin off guard. He wrestled with her, fueled by a raw, primal strength, and eventually threw her to the ground. He then leapt onto the crane, leaving the struggling assassin behind. As the crane plummeted, Mike executed a daring maneuver, driving the bus away from the perilous cliff. Della, watching his prey escape, his eyes burning with fury, fired after them, but it was too late. The journey was far from over, with the Chinese base still a considerable distance away. Della, relentless in his pursuit, was quickly gaining on them. Mike spotted the enemy in his rearview mirror. Danny, her body still weak from her injuries, gathered the remaining weapons and prepared for a final stand. But the female assassin, now armed with a rocket launcher, appeared on the back of Della's pickup truck. Danny screamed a warning to Mike, who, reacting with lightning speed, swerved the bus, narrowly avoiding the fiery blast. The rocket, however, struck the tunnel ceiling, sending a shower of debris raining down. Mike floored the accelerator, the bus hurtling into the darkness of the tunnel. Della's motorcycle-riding assassin, hot on their heels, followed close behind. As they neared the tunnel's end, Mike saw the assassin retrieve explosives, a chilling glint in his eye. Mike slammed the pedal to the metal, bursting out of the tunnel just as a deafening explosion ripped through the air behind them. Despite their narrow escape, the force of the blast still sent Danny reeling. Della's men were closing in again. Weijie and Star, armed with what little they had, tried to hold them off, but their aim was poor, and the female assassin quickly breached the bus, knocking them both down. Mike, seeing Weijie struggling, pushed him out of the driver's seat and took control. The assassin, fully armored, easily overpowered Mike, striking him twice with her knives, leaving him wounded and helpless. She then moved to the driver's seat, intent on killing Weijie. But Mike, regaining consciousness, intervened, desperately trying to stop the assassin. The two women fought fiercely. Shankha, the police officer, arrived, leaping onto the bus to join the fray. He landed a powerful blow on Mike, providing crucial support for the assassin. The assassin, now with renewed vigor, unleashed her full strength, ruthlessly choking Mike the belt. But Star, with a surge of courage, intervened, saving Mike from certain death. Enraged, unleashed a flurry of punches, but Star skillfully parried them. Mike then seized the opportunity, pushing Shankha out of the bus, leaving him to fall into the chasm. Mike, now holding his brother's urn, used it as a weapon, striking the female assassin and sending her flying from the vehicle. The assassin landed with a sickening thud. With the immediate crisis averted, Mike, still seething with rage, swerved the bus towards Della's car, ramming it with brutal force. Della, realizing the danger, desperately tried to reverse, but Mike cornered him against the edge of the cliff. After a silent, collective vote, they agreed Della must die. With the dust settled, the villagers rebuilt their lives. Weijie, now leading the community, used half of the land to construct a smaller dam, ensuring both water and affordable electricity for all. Mike, finding a measure of peace, finally scattered his brother's ashes in the majestic Himalayas, fulfilling a promise that had weighed heavily on his soul. In doing so, he also found clarity in his own heart, his gaze resting on Danny, a silent, heartfelt confession in his eyes.